Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Chaos Tactics I'm looking at the new psychic mechanics in the 10th edition, the new psychers we have seen, some of the new psychic powers, the new battle round sequence, comparing the new and the old Smite, and unfortunately, maybe with a bit of salt for the Thousand Suns, I think the new psychic maybe is not so good for the psychic heavy factions. But let's take a look. So today, the 19th of April, a lot of news every day. Didn't have the chance to make the math and the video yesterday about the psych abilities, so I'm doing it now. And yesterday I was really laughing with some salt, reading that for many people the psychic phase was not really fun or unfun and awkward, especially for example for the Tau Empire, that your opponent was, let's say, if you were Thousand Suns and playing the Tau, maybe the Tau would lose a lot of models with mysterious roles, and you couldn't participate in that. But I think it's really funny that, for example, if the Tau players would complain with a railgun, that is basically a point and kill the opponent. I mean, that if talk about unfun and awkward. But let's see, let's see Games Workshop if they will address some of the other unfun and awkward things in the game. But anyway, in this video, as I said, let's focus about the news about the battle round sequence, the psychic abilities in 10th edition, comparing the old and the new Smite damage, and looking at the new model stats and damage that we have seen. The two Psykers, the Librarian in Terminator armor and the Weirdboy from the Orcs. So with no further ado, let's get started. So let's get started with the psychic abilities. So basically, the psychic phase is gone. It will not be part of the battle round as a specific phase, and the psychic abilities will now be included in the data sheets, and they can be used in the corresponding phases. So they give some examples of things that we're doing mortal wounds, like smites or witchfires. Then they will become a sort of psychic weapon that the character or unit can shoot with in the shooting phase. Other spells that were like blessings and improving abilities, they will be just an ability for the Psyker, or some buffs that he automatically gives to the squad he's in, that the Psyker leader is joining. And then some of those can be used in the command phase or in the movement phase. They are giving, for example, the example of the jump for the weird boy, used in the in the in the movement phase. Some of the other, for example, Veil of Time. This is for the librarian. This is a psychic that he doesn't even have to cast anything. This automatically the unit that is that the librarian is added to gains automatic exploding sixes to hit. So so they showed the example of the Smite. The Smite becomes like a psychic weapon with D6 shots. It has a 24-inch range, and you can probably just target, not the closest model. You can target any unit you want within 24 inches. It hits on a 3+, so like a normal weapon, strength 5, AP -1, D3 damage, and this becomes that you can probably just save as normal with your armor save. You can also do, let's say, like overcharged smite, a focused smite. Then it gets the ability of devastating wounds. The devastating wounds mean 6 wounds give mortal wounds, or critical wounds give mortal wounds, which happens on a 6+ to wound. But it also gains the hazardous keyword here, and the hazardous infers that if you hit once to hit, then the Psyker will get some mortal wounds, similar to what happens today with the perils, probably. Then the focus smite has higher strength and gets devastating wounds and better AP. So we see the librarian in Terminator armor and Weird Boy examples. Also, their force weapons, their melee weapons become psychic. I don't know if this psychic keyword also will have some stratagems that you can do something with, or we can see that the librarian gives the psychic hood to the unit he joins. Then he gives a better protection versus specific psychic attacks. But all in all, I think for me that, and for my Thousand Suns collection at least, I think it's quite sad that it seems like there will be no longer a choice of spells, and going from the Thousand Suns where you have 18 spells to choose from, and then you can fine-tune your army with a lot of psychic abilities. Maybe if they just fix that the Exalted Sorcerer has these three, and the Infernal Master has two others or something like that, it takes away quite a lot of the fun of constructing the lists, in my opinion. And we don't know with his psychic weapons if there is possibility to deny somehow the psychic abilities. Maybe it could be a strat to be used, but let's see when we get more news. So in this table, I'm trying to look at the psychic abilities damage output and compare them to today's Smite. So here we have the Smite Witchfire weapon and the Smite Focused Witchfire. And we see the damage that these smites will be doing against all the models units that we have seen so far, from thermaguns up to the repulsor vehicle, the defensive profiles that we have. And we see here the normal smite will be doing, let's say, 1.3 wounds on a thermagant. The intercessors, almost one killed intercessor, but then when we go up to the terminators, we have quite low damage output with a 2+ save, and not wounding very efficiently. And then as we move up in the toughness from the vehicles, we get very low damage output from a normal smite. If we add the focused witchfire, we get some more damage for both termagants and intercessors, and the terminators we get some better wound rolls, and we also get the 6 to wound, give extra mortal wounds, and we have a little bit more damage also for the vehicles. But if you look further down, you see I calculated for the old smite with a warp of 5 with 2d6. If the opponent didn't have a deny, we have 1.8 wounds across all the targets, also for the vehicles, so much better, let's say, damage output, especially versus tough opponents. If the opponent had a deny, we would be doing only 1.2 wounds on average. But if we were, let's say, Thousand Suns +1 to cast, and the enemy didn't deny, then we will have two wounds on average. And then, of course, every time you would use a smite, it will become more difficult to pull through. With this new smite weapon, I guess the next Psyker with a smite would be able to do the same type of damage. The risk of injuring yourself is much higher with a new focus smite. At least it's 1 in 6, while the current risk to get perils with ones or with the twos or double ones or double sixes, this is only a 5% risk. If we look at the Weirdboy, he has the Edbanger Witchfire, only one shot, hitting on a 4+ ballistic skill, let's say. And this spell is quite interesting because the more models that are in his unit, the more powerful it becomes. So if it's, let's say, a 20 model, I just assumed here orc boys, or 20 other models, then it becomes a strength 9, AP -3, damage 4 spell. But it doesn't, let's say, do it doesn't. It's still only one shot, and it can do some damage, but not as good as the Librarian's Smite. And also it's quite hazardous. So if he has more than 10 models on a 1 to hit, he will be hurting himself. And then if it's only a small unit, then you can see, yeah, of course, lower damage with lower strength and lower damage from the weapon. Looking now a little bit more on the data sheets for the new Psyker leaders, the Librarian, he has the let's say the typical Terminator profile. He has 5 wounds and only 1 to capture objectives. He has a quite interesting anti-infantry combi weapon. I would assume this is just a combi weapon for him, and I wouldn't assume that the normal Terminators with combi weapons would get the same profile, because it has the interesting anti-infantry 4+, devastating wounds. So that means versus infantry, when he wounds, he can never fail a wound roll of 4 to 6, and these wound rolls will also deal mortal wounds instead of the normal damage. But he only has 1 shot with it, this combi weapon, and at half range he gets, of course, one more shot. And he has some nice abilities, as we saw before. 4+ feel no pain versus psychic weapons or attacks for the unit he's attached, so he could be protecting Terminators quite well. And then he also gives them exploding 6s for the attached unit for all the weapons. So this normally is around 25% more damage output with a nice 4+ invulnerable save. So that's it looks like Games Workshop is really pushing the Terminators, at least in my opinion. And then we see the Weirdboy. He has as we saw before, the Headbanger as his weapon, shooting weapon, and in melee he has a staff, and he can do the jump psychic every once per turn at the end of the movement. But if he rolls a 1, then his unit suffers d6 mortal wounds. Otherwise, he can teleport them around as it is currently. And in this table that you have seen, if you follow my videos, you have seen that I calculated for all the weapons we previously saw for ranged weapons, from the Termagun Spine Fist up to the Hunter Killer Missile. And now I've added the Librarian's combi weapon at the bottom there. As we saw, a very interesting anti-infantry type of profile, where we would always wound infantry on a 4+ to wound, and those everything 4+ would be doing mortal wounds instead of normal wounds. So even this lowly profile of strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1 can do much more damage, let's say, to a Terminator than it can do, let's say, compared to the normal Stormbolter, even if the Stormbolter has twice the amount of shots. But basically a Stormbolter is very lackluster against the Terminator profile. But with a Librarian's combi weapon, with the mortal wounds and anti-infantry profile, is wounding on 4+, and those 4+ translate to mortal wounds. So some nice, especially for Terminators, not super, let's say, not super strong against the vehicles. A little bit better than the Stormbolters due to the mortal wounds, but then it's only for 6+ versus the vehicles. And now looking also at the melee weapons, the force weapon, a psychic weapon for the Librarian, compared to the other melee weapons that I've already analyzed, from the Xenos Claws, from the Termagun up to the twin-linked Power Fists of the aggressors. We see that the force weapon, we compare it here to the Weirdboy's staff. The Librarian has more attacks but less strength of the weapon compared to the Weirdboy. So the extra attack from the Librarian gives him more damage output more versus all the targets, but not the highest, let's say, toughness repulsor here. And comparing to some of the previous weapons we have seen, for example, the power weapon, then of course the force weapon is better with a D3 damage profile, gives a bit higher damage compared to at least the infantry, and we see that, but it's not, of course, as strong as a power fist for the Librarian here. So, reaching to the summary and final thoughts, as we saw, the psychic abilities, they will be moved to our other phases. The psychic phase is no longer present in 40k, or will not longer be present in the new 40k. The psychic attacks basically become shooting weapons. The psychic buffs, etc., become abilities for the characters, and especially buffing the units that the leaders now will be able to join. The new Smite weapon, let's say, is not very efficient. It's actually very inefficient versus vehicles. It's lower damage in general versus most of the targets compared to the current Smite. At least it has a bigger range, 24-inch, and you can select targets more freely rather than targeting the closest visible. It's probably also more simple now to find the psychic abilities, that they are already on the datasheet. But in my opinion, the major complaint I have is that seems to be becoming a big loss to the versatility and customization, especially for the Psyker heavy factions like the the Grey Knights, the Thousand Suns, etc. Especially for Thousand Suns, for example, that's one of the reasons I selected also to build a Thousand Suns army, was to have the ability of picking and matching different spells, making a lot of psychic shenanigans. So this, I feel that will be a loss of the richness of the game. But let's see. I maybe I have to to keep some optimistic mind here. And anyway, change would be happy for some changes. So this completes the video. What do you think about the new psychic that they have been previewing? What do you think about the damage output of the new Smite weapon? Let me know in the comments. If you want to discuss further, please visit the Discord channel and join. You can also, if you want to further support my efforts in trying to bring you all the data analysis and keeping you up to speed with what's going on in the new 40k, you can visit my Patreon page or become a YouTube member. And with these words, GeneralJannis signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.